Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci, and you're watching NLL Lacrosse Talk. Our very special guest today is Brian Beisel. He's the assistant coach with the Ottawa Black Bears. I wonder if they're thinking of changing the name to the Ottawa Red Black. No, Bears. No, that's a CFL gag. That's a CFL gag. I'll leave that one out for another day. I just found out in the middle of talking to Brian that he lives across the street from me, almost literally and figuratively, in the next town, Collingwood. I'm in Wasaga, and Gary's in Toronto. We of the people who get a foot and a half of snow and go, oh, what a nice day, and then Brian has heard the same thing I've heard. When I hear from Toronto, they get an inch of snow and they're all confused. They don't know what to do. They're trying to look for snow tires to buy. Hey, Brian?
Yeah, completely shuts the place down. I live in the city of Brampton, and the work department is right here with us. It's entertaining sometimes.
And I apologize for the crack. The Ottawa Red Black Bears. No, just wondering if that would fly at all. I really appreciate you being here. We always start with the most important question: is what was the good thing that brought you to lacrosse? How did you come to lacrosse?
Well, I mean, my dad played and then coached. He coached rep lacrosse. I know we had the Bantams and the Midgets and the Nationals before I was born. Then I had an older brother who was playing, so I was pretty much born with a stick in my hand.
The other thing we got to talk about lacrosse here in this area. What we're going to do to help promote it. I don't know. Is there anything going on in Collingwood, Wasaga Beach?
Yes. We moved up when my son was in Pee Wee. So there is lacrosse in Stainer, and we quickly had a team that won a provincial championship. So we've had a couple of good groups. Two of those players were drafted to the junior A ranks, and they've done a lot of work trying to build that up. I've tried to help as much as I can, but free time is something I do not have a lot of. But I've run some clinics there myself at the Collingwood Y and a couple of places in Wasaga. We've done a lot to try to help build the game. They've actually done a pretty good job of going from a really, really bottom end organization to surprising at a lot of levels.
Yeah, I reached out to a few of the organizations here. They have, the younger, smaller organizations. I reached out to them, but I don't think they knew who I was or if I really had any honest interest.
They found me on the first day. I tried to hide from them, and hopefully I wasn't going to coach. So my wife showed up to register my son, and right away the president was waiting there going, so where's Brian? And how come he hasn't put in his application to coach? So they knew I was there already.
So when I should have asked a two-sided question. I said, what brought you into lacrosse and what dragged you into it?
It's not dragged. I've just been there. Even when I started coaching junior, I told my wife I'd do it for about 5 years, and that was almost 20 years ago. So I think once it's in your blood, it's really tough to step away from.
So you're you're a next generation. I'll call you a next generation lacrosse player. Your dad played as well. How much of that impressed you to play? What did you see with him involved that attracted you? I'm assuming that had something to do with it.
I think it was, I was just that kid that, back when I grew up, which was a long time ago, you played every sport. It was at the end of the street. I lived a mile away from Memorial Arena. That being a big factor. Jim Veltman was my neighbor. They lived right in behind us. Was Jim Veltman, John Veltman, Kevin Haynes, who was an unbelievable lacrosse player, lived a block away. So it was just in the neighborhood. It's what we all did. We went to the old outdoor box at Brampton Memorial Arena and grew up there. And I remember a gentleman named Mike Cassidy, who was my GM when I played junior, came by one day. I worked at Memorial Arena as well, and pointed out that 20 out of the top 25 players in Brampton junior A history grew up within a mile of Brampton Memorial Arena. So I just happened to fall into that radius. And I think that's probably what dragged me into it. But we all just loved it.
In a really nice way. Lacrosse is very infectious. And when you're in the middle of it, you can't help but get more and more involved. And it's so infectious that you can't get out.
Yes.
Or you don't want to.
I don't want to. And now that I get some decent paychecks to go with it, my wife doesn't want me to leave either.
There you go.
It wasn't always that way, though.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Very good.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the Brampton organization when you were playing with it, because it was the golden age of Brampton lacrosse. Some of the greatest players around, both junior and when you went up into senior. And let's just talk about the organization itself. What set it apart from some of the other organizations that made it so special?
I mean, for me, it was I grew up with Thursday nights going to Memorial Arena with my dad, my mom, and uncle, and everybody else, and you wanted to play major. And then the next night, you went to the junior game on Friday night, and you wanted to play junior. It was something everybody aspired to be, is that next level lacrosse player. And I think that's it. It was the history involved, and I used to hear stories about the Thompsons back in the 50s, the Tom Patrick. I mean, you just heard all these legends, and you wanted to be like them. And I don't think I ever lived up to being the legendary status, but I think we did okay.
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me when I started going to Excelsior's games was meeting up with all legends who were there at the games watching.
Right.
So everybody was so accessible while you were coming, even as just as a fan, to talk lacrosse and really be involved.
It was constant. And then for me, I was lucky enough that I also worked at Memorial Arena for 15 years of my life. And we would have, Ev Coates, who used to run the team. He just stopped by for a coffee twice a week. And then, when I was playing junior, the GM of the major team would stop by because he had things to do. So it was like everybody was in and out. And you say accessible. It was all the legends of the game and the current people in the game who were just always there. And that's also how we grew up, that outdoor box. Like, I learned how to take a backhand from Huey Ward. You look him up and go, well, that's a guy to learn from. Right. Yeah. He bordered on the property of Memorial Arena. So, it's just the way it was back then. And at better time, you're allowed to let your kids go play. And that's what we aspired to be, is lacrosse players.
Absolutely. And the organization was so successful for so many years with so many Man Cups and Minto Cups and things like that. And hopefully we get it back to its glory days, but at least it's on the upswing again.
And we believe so. It's been a bit of work, splitting the team in half after, whatever happened. And not that I think anybody knows all the details. It's been a lot of work, but seeing some traction and starting to get to where we want to be, it's fun, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
We know you can't go and compete against Six Nations right now. So it's not about winning. It's about building an organization, having some pride, and helping some players get to the NLL because they all want to be there.
Right. And I think that's the majority of it in MSL right now, is about working together. As long as the other teams all work together.
Froze there.
Gary, your fries are ready. No, just kidding. Gary's in Rogers limbo. He'll be back in a second. He always comes back. He goes, but he always comes back. Yeah, so Brampton, Gary has a real affinity with the Brampton Excelsiors. That's basically his basic jumping off point for lacrosse, and it's been a wonderful experience for him. I'll just interrupt with one question, Gary, and then you go ahead and take over. The communities of lacrosse, speak to why. I think we kind of did, but drill down on the fact that communities that embrace lacrosse embrace them deeply, like Orangeville. I can go on and on and on. They all embrace each organization with both hands and their whole heart. Why is that, do you think?
I think you hear it from you hear the medicine game and so on and so forth. Like, I believe that applies in all aspects, that it just, once it's in you, it becomes so important to everybody, and the community is so important. You look at Orangeville, and there's parents who have never played a game, and they're walking around with Northman tattoos, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they take such pride in it. And I just kind of chuckle because, I actually had an argument once with a parent, and telling me I was jealous when I played in Orangeville my last year of junior and won a Minto Cup. I'm like, not that jealous. I played a game, but I mean, they take such pride in it. And then they always, I take pride in the fact that they give back. It gives everybody a sense of purpose, and everybody needs that, right? And you watch how people are formed. Some of my lifelong relationships are born out of when I was a kid playing lacrosse. And if I don't see somebody for 30 years and you run into the first time, it's like you saw them last week. Like, they're still your best friends. And that extends out to the other teams. You start to go pro and you're now going against your quote unquote enemies, they're just like you, right? They are exactly just like you. Most grew up kind of middle class, right? Had to work for everything. And you realize that these are your brothers throughout the world playing the same game. And I don't think there's a lot of games like that.
Absolutely not. And I'd like to add this, Gary, before I give them back to you. The same situation attracts two totally different groups. The two groups I'm referring to are people who know nothing about lacrosse and people who know everything about lacrosse. When they end up going into a community, a lacrosse community, they assume that that's the way it is. Lacrosse people assume that's the way it always is, right? Yeah. It's a surprise, though, to new people who walk in and go, what the heck is this? And that's what pulls you in, because the importance of the game is lost, generally speaking. But when you get into the specific circumstance, all of a sudden you really see the gravitas as far as the game is concerned for the people who are a part of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I've had so many friends of mine, different levels. As you come into work, I'm working with the new people now who now see me coaching. They think it's the coolest thing in the world, and they're really learning what the lacrosse world is like. And you know this person, you know that person. Do you hate him? I'm like, I don't hate anybody. Like, anybody who's been through anything like what I've been through, I really appreciate. And that might be the guy, broke my stick over his leg. I really appreciate that. And until you've been through those battles, and then having to know, like, you have no idea what it's like to actually go through, unless you played in the Man Cup 7 games in 9 night with a bench clearing brawl. Like, it's like you have no clue. And that's why we all appreciate each other. And I just started to figure that out as I got older. Right. Yeah. You start coaching, and the guys you played against, you go to Peterborough and they're laughing. Like, remember when we did this? And you're like, oh, yeah. You don't hate them. Like, you just don't hate them. You learn to love everybody. And, and I just don't think that's the case in every other game. I listen to lots of other podcasts in hockey, and there's some hatred out there. Like, they hate each other from the 70s and 80s. And it's not the same in lacrosse.
Now you come off the floor after having it out, really, hammer and tong, man, going after each other, and then you walk in and you see the same two guys having a beer after the beer, and they're discussing who's going to buy the beer. No, I'm going to buy it. It's my turn. No, it's your turn. No, it's my turn.
It's 100% bizarre from the outside looking in, but it's the coolest thing in the world.
It's totally cool
when you're in that world.
Yeah, and it's even more so now, because when I go to the Rebesky tournament and seeing it in Europe in the same aspect, a big world, but really still a small community. All around the world. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I was lucky enough this year. I was asked to coach with Dan T. We had Team Poland, which was not a, high-end, super talented team. We helped them out. They came to Brampton for a week. We had some practices. But when we went down to the Worlds to see the lacrosse community and how everybody handled each other, we practiced before Team Canada, before our first game. And our guys couldn't find it in them to get off the floor. Like, they were starstruck. And of course, these are guys that I've coached. I mean, Christian Del Bianco and Eli Salama, like, I've coached like 7 of them that were on the team. And they're like, Coach, do you know them? I'm like, well, yeah, I know them. Like, can I get an autograph? So when you ask these guys to come over and talk to our players, they're like, oh my God. Like, and they knew how important, the Team Canada guys knew how important it was to get hello from some of the best players in the world. They all went out of their way. Right. It wasn't the most convenient thing for them, but they understood how important it was to grow the game and what they were there for, as well as trying to win a world championship. And again, I just don't think that happens at the World Hockey Championships.
Well, the upside of the experience of being involved in lacrosse is that because it doesn't reach the level of the kind of popularity that hockey does, I don't think lacrosse in general is as jaded as some other sports because of the financial rewards for being involved with those sports. There's sort of this disconnect where basically hockey players have to be protected from the people out there because they're so popular. But lacrosse has a nice little median that they're involved in, where they get to have the freedom to enjoy the people that love their game.
Yeah. It's still in Ottawa. I don't know if every team does it, but after a game we have to go upstairs to the bar, which definitely how I came up, but that's not the Toronto Maple Leafs way. Like, come meet Austin Matthews in the bar after the game and get an autograph. So to really be in touch with the players and have these little kids sit there and go, oh, like, there's Jeff Teat, like there he is. It's kind of neat. And again, very rare because it doesn't happen in many sports, if any.
Right.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about your NLL career and how it got started with the Ontario Raiders back in '99. Let's talk about your first training camp. I always love asking this. Was it what you expected?
No, it was actually kind of weird. We were the new team. So we started off with members of the PLPA standing in the parking lot, warning us there might be a labor dispute. And as you're just worried about making the team or not, saying that you're allowed to practice, but after practice, it might be different. It was just a really weird time. And then you add the nerves to it. Because half of our team, being an expansion team, half of us were rookies. Right. So we did have some great veterans. Pat Coyle was there, Jim Belton was there, but for the most part, there was a whole bunch of us with no idea what to do, no idea how to handle ourselves. I think I probably struggled for a few years. So it was a learning experience, but I've also taken that, how I felt and very unsure how to do things, and transfer that into coaching. And try to make sure he always gives that little advice or a tap on the butt to the new player because they need it. Because I remember how terrified I was.
Right. Because you got some of the greatest coaches. And as we go through some of the teams that you were on, you played for Sanderson, you played for Bob McMahon, Les Bartley, Johnny Meridian, Bob Hanley, Dave Huntley. That's a who's who.
Derek Keenan.
Lacrosse royalty.
Yeah, I've had a few. In hindsight, you didn't really appreciate it at the time. Again, as I hit my 30s, you really realized who I'd learned the game from. And also that helps my coaching style. I could take a little bit from all of the best coaches in the world and try to make it my way. I'm certainly not going to be as hard on players as Terry Sanderson, but there's a need for some of it some of the time. So again, completely blessed. I mean, there is more than the list you just gave me.
Yeah.
And I think I played somebody, probably my dad, he keeps track of this. He told me, you've played for like 11 guys who are now NLL head coaches. And then it's like, and or played with somebody on every bench out there in the league right now. And it's like, you just really learn to appreciate it later in life, how kind of lucky I've been along the way.
Right. Now, you actually played a year with Toronto when they moved into Toronto into the Waters organization and with Bartley and everything, and things started forming there. You really get your opportunity when you get over to Albany. And now you get a chance to play, and you damn near won the championship by an eyelash to Toronto as 13-12.
Still hurts. It still hurts.
Yeah,
I think Dan Ladouceur, who's now our head coach in Ottawa, scored his one and only playoff goal in his career in that game, and they beat us 1.
Yeah.
But on top of a whole bunch of other D guys who scored that game, it still hurts. But thanks for bringing that up. That's great.
But my point of that thing was taking a look at the talent pool in that. And Bob McMahon that year was coach of the year. Rob Blaisdell was goalie of the year. You had 5 guys who were selected to the South team, the All-Star team, Blaisdell, Cam Woods, Jim Moss, Josh Sanderson, etc. So that was a team where you could really sink your teeth into learning on how to be a winner in there. Like, let's say the Brampton organization taught you how to win and how to be that team guy, but at the NLL level.
If you really look at that roster and the age of us, that was all of us with a little experience that broke into the league. And now if you looked at that roster, you go, oh, if they had kept them together, that's championship after championship. Like we were just a very good lacrosse team that, we were all young and came up together, loved each other. We took a bus down to Albany and half our road games all together. We spent so much time together. It was probably the most fun time in my life. Like we probably had a little too much fun sometimes, but we were a family, like a true family. That when you see these guys now, Cam Woods in San Diego, right? You still talk about those times back then. And it does hurt that we didn't quite win. I think most of us did get a championship at some point, but we should have won one together.
Yeah, no, I agree. Biggest thing was letting the cat out of the bag and getting attendance in there because they couldn't keep it in Albany because attendance was poor. Kind of what it's going through now.
Yeah, it was we were always hopeful, and it seemed to be a tough sell, and we heard all sorts of rumors of where we might be sold to. At one point, when Terry Sanderson left us, we were actually supposed to go to Montreal. He was negotiating with the Montreal ownership group to take then the team up there to Montreal with them. So he kind of negotiated a contract, and then it was like, oh no, you're getting an expansion team instead. So that's the only reason Terry left us. We were supposed to have him and Bob McMahon at the same time and keep that core group together. And Montreal drew well. If they had in my opinion, if they had a good team and we were top level, we could have had something happen in Montreal, and we would have had some success on and off the floor.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Montreal hasn't had another kick at it just yet. I have a feeling that it's down the road not far, especially with you guys in Ottawa, because an instant rivalry is right there, and then Quebec City isn't that far off from there.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I remember playing there, and there was a very good crowd, very loud crowd. They did the one game last year with New York, and it was another good crowd. So it's probably somewhere on the horizon. Not that I know anything about what the commissioner's thinking. He's got his job. I've got mine.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It just makes logical sense, especially with Ottawa placed the way it is where you are now. And it doesn't exclude Halifax anymore. It'll bring them into the fold with rivalries as well.
There's lots of natural things there, and we all know Montreal's a great city, period. Who doesn't want to go spend a weekend in Montreal? I've had a few.
Right. So. You moved to San Jose, and you get to spend winters in the warmth. Well, at least for weekends.
Yeah, on weekends. Funny thing, that's my wife was pregnant with my son that year, so I was working Sunday to Thursday afternoons with the city of Brampton, not really seeing my wife, traveling away on the weekends. That's why it was only 1 year. I had Johnny Meridian was great. I said I can't continue to do this. It was just too tough. So I had no fun in San Jose. I just flew in and out, and then I had a baby boy at the end of the year, which is always a tough thing to do heading into playoffs. But that's the NLL life.
Yeah. And that plane ride, I've done it to go to San Diego to cover games, and my God, I don't have to play the game. I just have to cover it. And by the time I get back, by the time Monday rolls around, it's like, what the hell did I do to myself? To go to that game.
Yeah, and I didn't have a choice. Where I worked, Memorial Arena, we had the Brampton Capitals, the junior hockey team play out of there. So Thursday nights I was working. If we had a Friday game, I worked Thursday nights, flew out in the morning. Most of our games were Saturday, but we practiced Friday night in San Jose at midnight. Airtime.
My God.
I remember Johnny Meridian actually yelling at me once, like, are you going to pick it up? And I turned, I'm like, it's 4:30 in the morning. like I'm just trying to make it through practice. It's like, oh, is this tough? I'm like, yeah. And this is real tough. I got a pregnant wife at home. I'm balancing everything. Like, hey, I forgot. I'm sorry. So that life is, that's all the best times of my life, but it's a tough one. It's a tough balance.
Right. And Johnny Meridian's energy, because he's been on the show a number of times on both of my shows, and his energy, energy level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you're exhausted, oh God.
I remember him trying to get us pumped up, and we were all just, it's 4:30 in the morning, Johnny. I'm sorry.
Now you do make a trip back to Toronto, and you get a championship out of the deal too. So
yes, Johnny was great to me. He's told me at the beginning of the year, if it doesn't work out, let me know, which we all knew that it wouldn't. Give me 1 year and help build the organization. At the end of the year, he says, what do you think? I said, hey, I love playing there, and we had a good team. I think we were 12-4 or something. We had a good record. But I want to go back to the East. So he said, put 3 teams out there, which naturally it was, I want to drive. So it was Buffalo, Rochester, Toronto. I was traded back to Toronto, which was now, back with Terry Sanderson and a whole bunch of guys that I played with before. So really easy to fit in with that group who'd already won a bunch of championships. And lucky for us, we got one more. So I got my ring.
Yes. And the best thing is you can celebrate with a lot of Brampton guys, because that team was full of Brampton Excelsiors.
Yes. Yeah. And we touched on that Brampton lacrosse community before, but I really appreciate it now when you look at all of those people. And, Gary Walker lives 3 doors down from my parents, and Dylan Evans lives across the street from my parents. And it's like Jim Veltman who lived there, and then his sister bought the house, and that's where Adam Wiedemann grew up. Like, it's just like all these players that come out of Brampton, and to be with those guys in Toronto during the NHL strike, when we were sold out everywhere and we were front page news because we were making $20,000 a year and the millionaires were sitting out. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool.
Definitely. Now you make another trip and you're off to Arizona and playing for Bob Hamley before you finally settle down in Philadelphia playing for Dave Huntley. Again, the who's who of coaching and teams, the teammates you had in Arizona, Dan Dawson, Peter Loft, Blaise Delegan, the Malowskis, Scott Self. These were great teams.
That was I was brought in there as a veteran guy. Also, my daughter was born. I was traded 2 weeks after my daughter was born, so now I had 2 young kids, and I was traveling across the continent. It was great. But then going in with that group, and obviously, lots of history with Kurt Malowski afterwards. That's where you kind of meet him, and instantly we realized we were a really good team, and we came up a little bit short in the finals, and then we had the NHL ownership, which we all know how that worked out.
Yep.
And the team disbanded. I mean, that was another team that stuck together for another couple of years. We were going to be really good. That was Dan Dawson and company, all at 23, 24 years old. Like, if we had kept that group together, I can't imagine what they would have done together. Mm-hmm. I would have moved on as an old guy, but they would have won championships without me. Yeah.
Right. But also the Philadelphia one too, because Iannucci, Snyder, Jacobs, Berge. I got Snyder. He's coming on the show in a couple of weeks too, so that's gonna be interesting to talk.
For sure, 100%. And that was the year Iannucci broke the scoring record, and that was my first introduction to a kid with like a top 5 talent that I've ever seen. He was trying things in practice that I'd never seen anybody think about before. And he was sitting there practicing over and over and over. He would go to dinner with his lacrosse stick in his hand. And it's like, well, there's a special player who had some knee injuries, and injuries caught up to him. But again, lucky enough you're part of somebody setting a National Lacrosse League record, and just sitting there watching, because I didn't play a whole lot then. I just played a few shifts and watched in between. But it was fantastic to be a part of, and that was Philly on the upswing, and we were back to 18,000 fans a game in Philadelphia, which I mean, talk about a loud crowd.
Yeah.
What a great place to play. It's an unbelievable place to play when that team is going well. And we were up there with some of the best that year. It was a fun place to play.
Right. All right. Let's talk about coaching. You spent a lot of time in junior developing the stars of tomorrow. My question is it more rewarding to watch somebody move their way up, or where they've already made it and, honing their skills?
For reward, everybody wants to be at the highest level, but I love having people have success. So the junior aspect and some of the players that I've coached over the years, having them have success and getting it. Even still, sometimes they don't really listen to you, but they always come back and say, "Coach, you were right. Right? I went to my first NLL camp, and you were bang on about everything." And again, some of the lifelong friendships that I have are made out of me coaching, as these guys are now older. You run into them, and there's still certainly a mutual respect between all of us, and lots of good times shared afterwards.
Right. Now you started with the Excelsiors junior, and you have the 2009 Minto Cup, and again, just on the cusp. But what a great team! And for the purposes that we just talked about, elevating every one of them became an NLLer, and that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the old chicken and the egg. I always credit all of my players, because am I here right now if I didn't have Kyle Rubish, Dylan Evans, Chris Corbeil? I don't know. I mean, I really don't. There's lots of guys who put their heart into the game that, because of where they're coaching, don't get the same opportunity. So I do think it works both ways. I'd like to think I helped them. They certainly helped me. I mean, if I didn't have success, I don't get these opportunities that I've had over the years.
Right. And you after that, Brampton goes in a different direction. You wind up with Kitchener-Waterloo and the Braves. You win a Coach of the Year there. And again, it's elevating players. And you're selling yourself short, because we talked about all the coaches that you had. Yeah. And taking just a bit here and there and everywhere, that makes you really to draw from your toolbox some of the greatest things around.
It does help. But again, I walked into Kitchener with a very young Dane Smith, Kyle Jackson, Chris Cloutier, brought in John St. John. Like, I had some guys who were just like elite. And they're great kids. Like Dane Smith, we asked him to, play defense. You're probably going to have to break into the league playing defense. And it's being he was a superstar in the making. He went, "Sure, coach, whatever you want." So, yeah, I think it helped them, but again, they certainly helped me, not only in success, but you learn how to handle them. And not all of the stories that I've had with players over the years are success stories. There's been some bumps in the road. There's been some stuff that I learned from, and you do differently the next time.
Right. Of course. Now that brings us over to one I was curious about the most when we're talking off air, is jumping into CLAX with Paul St. John in 2011. I want to talk about that league. I find that league so interesting. Veltman was the commissioner, and it was a semi-professional league, and it was one of its kind. It was ahead of its time too, really, for a lot of it.
The funny thing is we were talking about that this year. If you look at CLAX, I mean, it was a great opportunity for us to learn. You're essentially in the AHL of lacrosse. The first thing I did was call Greg Ireland, a former coach of mine, junior, who coached in the AHL. Like, how do I do this? Like, do I need young players, old players? Like, you look for advice. But the league itself, I mean, Paul, he's got so much passion trying to build the game and do everything for all of the right reasons. And we lost 6 players in our first year to the NLL. So you talk about rewarding. We were a first place team. You lose 6 guys. Well, you lose in the playoffs. And that's when the development becomes more important than the winning. But then you look at the development of us as coaches. Jason Crosby now in the NLL. Dan Ladouceur now in the NLL. Myself now in the NLL. Glenn Clark was in Toronto, now in the NLL, right? And you go, oh yeah, like that was such a big part of us learning how to coach men and now relate to men and a different set of issues off the floor that they're bringing to the arena. And you've got guys on the way up and the guys on the way down from the NLL, which you do manage as well when you're in the NLL. So it was a great introduction. Not that we got it right all the time, but now you really understand what all these other coaches, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And it was a great learning platform for us. And it was a great opportunity for the players. And I still tell the players now, when someone says, should I play in the ALL? I'm like, well, if we need a body, who do you think we call?
Right.
You call, like Kevin Haynes last year was coaching in Brampton. I give him a call, or Paul St. John. Who's your best defenseman? Who's this? Who's that? So it's where you need to be in that next league. And I still try to go to as many ALL games as I can, which is not a lot, but I've been to a couple this year.
Yep.
Because you're looking at the next guys.
Yeah. I always loved it is that it taught a lot of the guys how to become professionals and stay up in the professional level.
Yep. Yeah. I said, right off our team the first year, we had 6 that went up, and I think we had another 4 off our roster who ended up playing in the NLL. So it was that, learn how to play, learn how to be professional, learn how to balance everything else in life and perform at a high level. Well, you're pointing out, like, there's Terry Sanderson sitting in the stands tonight. Like, you guys should be good, right? So it was for me, it was a fantastic league that didn't work out financially, but now Paul's found another way. And, it's not a professional league in a sense, but it's the next best lacrosse players, and they're all on the cusp.
Yeah. It's funny. We had Brian Cole on the show a little while ago, about a year ago, and he had brought up the idea of AHL. And do you think that would work with the ALL? There's enough teams now that I think it would work for individual so that you guys could draft and keep hold of these guys. You wouldn't have to lose them at the end of training camp.
I would love if we could get to that. If you had somebody running the same systems, and it's kind of like the junior B team with a junior A team above, like you place players there, and this is what I need them to do. And you're taking the best right-handed defensive defenseman, not like give me your best D guy, right? You're really like in the same system. This is the guy who got hurt. This is who I bring up. It would be fantastic. And I do think that there's room for the league to grow there. And I do think we can get there.
Right. I look forward to it. I think that would be spectacular because that would put it right up as the way NHL was moving itself up.
Yep.
All right. Barrie Lakeshores over in 2015. You're back into junior A. And you take over for Lindsay Sanderson, but he stays as the GM and you work with him. And that little relationship.
I love Lindsay. He's there again as all these guys that I've played for as a coach. There as a mentor, and I was pretty established as a coach, and he's maybe a little bit old school as a coach. So we got to mesh in kind of the way that he wanted to do it, and I toned him down a little bit, and then he kind of tweaked me on certain things. And we together, we made the playoffs with a team that never made playoffs before, and we had some success. And then Lindsay took the call back to Orangeville, and I think that hurt the organization. And he was also the buffer between me and the upper level management, and that was then more difficult. So having Lindsay around as a mentor and actually just a great guy to have a beer with, it was fantastic.
Right. Now, while all this is going on, now Calgary comes and Molosky, you become a scout for them. Yeah. Now, yeah. One of the things that's interesting to me, and I had Neil Doddridge on a while back also, and we're talking about things like that and what specific he looks for. And he talked about something I would never think of, is the guy's running style. You know, if they run on the toes or run on the heels, because they're worried about $50,000 to ACL, MCLs, and things like that. Is that something that would pique your fancy when you're looking at guys, or?
I look at absolutely everything. I'll be honest. Most times when you look at a player, sometimes you go back for a second look. With the guys who you know are going to make it, not the guys on the edge, you can probably tell in the first 10 minutes that they just have a certain thing. It's not just talent; it's the effort, it's the grittiness. There's a lot. Bless you. There's a lot that rolls into it. I've never thought about looking at somebody's running style, because if you get it done, you get it done. I mean, right. I don't know if I look graceful running or ugly running. I know when I was of the right age, I got there pretty quick. So I think that's all that matters to me.
Right. You were part of some pretty big drafts, and probably things that are thorns in your side now, you know, Marshall King, Hayden Dixon, a few others down the way. So I think your style was pretty successful in the drafting.
Yeah, I mean, that's you're just a small part in it with Kurt. What I learned is the preparation underneath Kurt Molosky. We knew everything about everybody. I remember the one year we sat in the draft and we picked the entire first round in order. Like, it was just bang on. This is what's going to be available at 16. Right. And so it was the preparation. I learned that through him, and it's the expectation through him. So collectively as a group, we had eyes everywhere. We all knew what we were looking for. Very clear. This is our needs this year. And we had a lot of success finding guys, not just the first round. That's easy, but we had Tyson Bell in the third round, Chad Cummings in the fourth round. The list could go on and on. We had guys that we had to release because of the non-AHL thing that went on to 10, 12 years in an NLL career, and we knew it. We just didn't have a spot for them. So that's credit to the whole organization from GM on down.
Right. And you guys win 2019, and a culmination of everything, and Del Bianco in net too, finding that diamond in the rough, what I got to watch through his junior career too, which was just
drafting him. I knew nothing about him, and we were talking at our draft table, and I remember Kurt saying, like, second round pick, and like, no, this kid's going to be the best in the world. I'm like, how do you know at 18 years old? He's like, he's going to be the best in the world. And that would be tough to argue against that, other than he has no record to show this year. But, we found him second round, and obviously every team now doing it over again would be drafting him number one.
Absolutely. Now you get your chance behind the bench. Rob Williams had to go away, and you take over in the defensive spot there. And now you have Bob McMahon, you have Kurt Molosky, and yourself at the NLL level.
And Rob Williams. I was actually very lucky. That's a guy that I played with way back in Ontario. We're friends. We were scouts together. Then he was elevated to an assistant coach. I was a scout with him. He just had a young family and needed to step away from the bench, so he stayed on as a scout. So, we were always to have the guy who was coaching last year be the one that you call after every game and say, hey, what do you think about this? On top of Kurt Molosky, who was the most prepared guy on earth, and Bob McMahon, who is my favorite coach and how he handled me. Lucky, just lucky, because everybody thinks they're ready for the NLL, and then you step up there and it's just faster. You get on the bench for the first time, and I'd spent lots and lots of games on a bench at what I thought were comparable levels, and then you realize I wasn't quite ready yet. It took a couple of games, and to have them all in my corner. It makes you. It really does make you.
Right. Comparing the NLL that you played into to what you're coaching now, is there a comparison?
No, because these guys are overall, they're faster, they're better athletes. We had the best stick skills at the time, but you see what they do with sticks now. They've been playing lacrosse year round. some of them since they're 3 or 4 years old. Then you add in American universities, like all the lacrosse background that they've had that we haven't. On top of, I didn't find the gym till 30 years old, I'll be honest. And even at that, I just rode the bike. So, I mean, on top of the athletes that they are and how much faster they play it, like it's the same game, but I'm afraid to go look at some of our tapes from back then to realize how slow we were.
Right.
That's when reality kicks in.
Yes. So I just don't look.
I was going to say, luckily enough, you could go to our YouTube page at All Lacrosse all the time. And I inherited Bill Fox's VHS collection from Mill and from up to about 2010 or 11.
Oh, perfect.
And I have been converting since COVID years. And I have been converting about 80 or 90 tapes, 2 or 3 a month, and putting it up on there. I got about 40 or 50 games up on the YouTube page of the retro games. And I love watching them. I love watching them. It's so great to, when you're explaining the game to people, is that the guys behind the bench, this is their heyday.
I know I used to watch because some of the coaches they had even in minor, like I played for Bramwell Fong, who then played in the pro league. And you'll watch some of the old tapes and you go, man, they're slow. And I know now if I looked at my tape from, I don't know, the 2002 Man Cup, I'd be like, oh man, we're slow. So I don't want to see it. I'll just know that it was good at the time, and that's good enough for me.
Right. Now we're talking about where you are now, and you came into Ottawa this year. The team moved over, and you came in as a defensive coach. This team is so much different than the team that was over in New York. Rich did an awful lot of tinkering around. I love Rich. Rich was on the show also. He always talked about having character, not characters. And it certainly looks like he's got that in his dressing room now.
Yeah, he's done a great job of bringing those guys in that really helped build this team. And then it's a classic case of some of the young guys' growth, right? One more year and becoming a veteran. You can see it in some of the young ones and all the difference in the world as they really grow into understanding what it's like to be an NLL lacrosse player and how to win. And we've obviously had some success. We're working on a bit more. But watching the growth in the organization and the players over the past couple of months, it's and obviously I've got a bit of background with some success. You can see that there's something special coming with this group.
The move also creates some change that needs to happen. It's just the natural structure in the NLL where you try to get local guys to show up.
Yeah, it works out. I mean, I don't know if you know, we practice at Brampton Memorial Arena. I mean, for me, we practice Wednesday nights. My parents still live 3 blocks away, so I stayed out at their place after practice. But I mean, everybody's somewhat local. Travel's a lot easier. Family get to come support a lot more, which I think is really important for players. So it's been a great move, I believe, for the organization. Not that I know things at the higher level, but the recent talks I've had with the owner about little things, they seem really thrilled with it. We've been embraced by the lacrosse community. And my belief is if we can string together a few more wins and make sure that we're in a playoff or hopefully hosting a playoff game, the response that we'll get in Ottawa, which is probably starved for some success, will be fantastic.
It goes back a long way. Ottawa's not new to lacrosse and not new to NLL lacrosse. So
no, back when I coached in junior, they had a team that actually made the playoffs in their first year. So, I mean, they've got lots of history there, lots of two great junior B organizations right in the area. And you look at the surrounding area in Akwesasne and Gowanaki, it's like there's a lot around there that we're starting to see and we're starting to draw from. But everybody wants to see a winner, so that helps.
Right. Yeah. Now, the back end that you have there is huge. They're big, they're tough, they're mean. I'm looking at the stats there. You got
nice
6'6", you got Kyle Matisse 6'5", you got Brent Noseworthy at 6'4". You know, that's so wandering into trees. That's wandering into the forest. And there, and of course Higgins, who's a big guy in net too. He's also having the breakout year that I knew he could have.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and I've watched him for a long time. We actually had him very briefly in Calgary when we had an injury, and he stepped in and played well there. So Higgins is not a surprise for us for how good he is. I think we all knew it, and now we're getting to see it. As for the other guys, they've all been great, and you've got to be big these days. Like some of these guys on offense, they're massive. So they're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Some of them, you need some big guys on the back end, and we have some guys who work hard and they're great athletes. And you know, they're not mean; they're really nice guys who just play hard.
No, it's just as a group, you've given up 77 goals in 8 games. So just around 9 goals a game. That's pretty good statistics, NLL wise.
Yeah. We as a group, we're proud of that. But as a group, we always look at that 1 or 2 a game that we could have trimmed off there. And I know that seems a little bit crazy, but we still know that we have a ways to grow as a unit, and we plan on it. Like we try to get better every week, and that's our goal. And if we do, we will be in the playoffs, and we'll be a threat in the playoffs.
Yeah, making sure to stay healthy, because a couple of injuries have really hampered things out. But Jeff looks great. Jeff always looks great. Curtis Conley was one of my favorites when he was on the show, and he was talking about in New York, he would like to get out to the warm-ups early, but not to warm up. He would sit at the end of the bench and watch T pick the corner 50 times in a row, and just sat there with his jog on.
He's special in so many ways. And people say I'm biased because I've known him since he's born. Yes. And Dan's a friend of mine. Yes. But I mean, you watch this kid grow up, and, in Tyke, you're like, he's really good, but, and then in novice, he's really good, but, and then in midget, like, he's really, I don't know, when he gets up, well, in his second year junior, he was playing up in the majors in the playoffs. Like, oh man, maybe there is no but here. And now you get to watch him play against the best in the world, with the best in the world at the Worlds. And in my opinion, he was their best offensive player.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, I remember watching him walk into the back door at the arena, and he was walking in with, I think it was Challen Rogers and Steve Priolo and somebody else. But I mean, he had this little kid, size-wise, beside these monsters. And my wife turned, and knowing Jeff is like, and nobody realized that the little guy's the best in the world. So he's found a way, and I suspect the game is just slower for him than the rest of us, to play at the highest level and do things or see things that none of us truly understand. So you just appreciate.
Yeah. I was sitting with Cordingley at track one day, and this is when he's still playing junior, and we were talking about it, and he reminded him of Gretzky. Is the game moved slower, like you said, for him? He could see everything before it happened, but he was also able to move so nobody could ever hit him flush, hence him not getting hurt.
Quarter second, half second, and I think I have some insight to this. You guys, you hear this all the time, but in hockey, I played junior hockey, and it was fast for me. Like, I played as hard as I could. You get the puck, chip it out, and go hit somebody, and everything's fast. In lacrosse, I knew what was happening next, right? And he's at a different level. Like, so to know that lacrosse, I know you're going to be open in half a second, or I know that you're going to come and try to pick me, and I get open to receive the pick. Like, the game was a little bit slow. I think with guys at that level, it is like slow motion, and they're just laughing that we don't quite understand it.
Right. It's
apologize to the dogs.
Just truly amazing to watch that. Plus, now you have some support for him. Sundown looks good. Riley O'Connor is getting healthy again, and all these other things going on. So it really is, all the extra support, so they can't key on T.
Yeah, it's a team game, right? Every once in a while, a guy steps up and quote unquote wins the game by himself, but you really look into it, and it's somebody got him open for a pick 4 times, and somebody made a great pass, and then he made a great pass to someone else who dunked the ball or did something. Lacrosse is kind of the ultimate team sport. This isn't basketball, where Michael Jordan can just go out there and say, give me the ball, and I'm going to go score the next 12 baskets, and he did. It takes everybody.
Right. So what's next for Brian Beisel? I know the summertime you're up in Owen Sound because, you don't do enough traveling around. So
No, I'm not with them. I went to, because I'm a sucker for lacrosse. My son was playing there, and so I helped out. So just doing the Brampton Majors again this summer. And then this part of the reason to be involved in the summer is to help our team and our organization, but then you're instantly scouting every night. Keep track of the guys who are in the next draft.
Awesome. I really want to thank you for taking the time. Busy week. I know you got games this weekend, and to take the time with us, it's really appreciated. Thank you so much, Brian.
Really appreciate you guys having me on. Nice to meet you both. And hopefully we can talk again sometime, maybe after a championship.
Absolutely. And I definitely will catch up with you at MSL. I've been doing their media too.
Here we go. So I will see you soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
And I'll get your contact information. We'll have to get together up here. I don't know anybody in lacrosse all the way up here. I don't know how many there are up here, but
there's a few. Bob Burke actually moved up there to Wasaga a couple years ago. You'd be surprised that there's a few people starting
to talk about it. I'll get your number from Gary and I'll give you a call.
Sounds good. I look forward to it, and I don't mind beer either. So.
Oh. Yeah. Well, that's a great coincidence. And at Chuck's, they have appetizer, half price appetizers at 9. I guess they're our new sponsor now. Sorry, Gary.
I don't work
perfect.
Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's great talking lacrosse, and it's great talking lacrosse to people who love the game as much as you do, and who have worked as hard as you have within the game. It's not easy for anybody. Brian, I really appreciate this. Brian Beisel, of course, the assistant coach with the Ottawa Black Bears. Joke aside, as far as the Red Black Bears, we love the CFL, Gary and I, and so that's an interesting combination.
So do I, guys. Watch the Grey Cup every year.
It's awesome. We're going to talk because there's some stuff I'm doing here that you might be interested in. We'll talk again. All right. Thanks for watching. Hey, listen, next time you see somebody with a lacrosse stick, give it a shot. Pick it up. Be careful. You may never put it down again. Thanks for watching, everybody. Till next week, 4 o'clock Thursdays. This is NLL Lacrosse Talk. Thanks for joining Gary and I.